Hey everyone, I'll go ahead and get started. Obviously, I'll be able to refer people back to the recording if they don't get in to this. So thanks everyone who's got the new link and joined. This is our monthly district advisor update call. We usually do go ahead, put in the chat, tell us where you're from so that we record that. Alrighty, thanks everyone. Moving down the list, COVID-19 updates, really nothing new here. As you've probably seen, we are using the Launch Nebraska status info as part of the PEBT, pandemic EBT benefit collection, but as we've seen most districts, that doesn't actually apply to. Most districts didn't seem that they were reporting that they have school-wide closures, or so. I'll leave this on here. Of course, we would always like to have correct data on that website. All right, our upcoming virtual data conference, we've got some more details about it. The title this year is Renewal and Acceleration with Data. The main conference is going to be Wednesday, May 12th, for most of the day, 9:30 to 2:30 Central. That is going to be the same day where we would have usually had our next monthly meeting, so we're going to go ahead and skip this meeting next month. We'll be covering the same kind of stuff at the conference, so I definitely encourage everyone here to tune in. This link here is the our info page for this. I believe we will be probably posting a sign-up link here. For now, this page is just announcing where it'll be. But the link I have here will be a good link to check back on. I'm sure we'll be sending stuff out in the bulletin, etc. Once everything is ready. Another thing we're gonna do is kind of working with what we've always been doing with work days. We're gonna essentially take some of the things that maybe typically would have been like a session at the conference, but we're just gonna stretch it out since we're fully virtual now. So we'll be scheduling short training sessions, like 1 or 2 hours, like monthly, after the conference. So those will be on like specific topics, just kind of going more in depth. Yeah, probably something like that would be in a breakout session back when we used to have the regular conference. So we'll talk about that at the May 12th conference meeting. So, hold a slot on your calendar if you can. Advisor current year 2021 updates. Nothing much other than we have released the CRDC reports. These reports just basically mimic the way the data reports look when you enter them at the CRDC. So it's just a preview of all the data we have in Advisor that would be relevant to report to the CRDC. We will come up with some kind of method for districts to opt out. We haven't defined that yet. It may just be an email or something. So we'll talk more about that in the future. Obviously, we still have plenty of time to work that out. The data that you would be reporting to Advisor now, we predict probably won't be reported to the CRDC group until January, most likely. And yeah, that's the only update to the website that's happened lately. So they've got a whole category. There's several reports there. So. Leah, I don't know what bulletins you're talking about. I mean, we did send out a bulletin, an NDE bulletin item about our CRDC reports, but that only goes to, you know, users in your district that are on our portal. But if that's the bulletin you're talking about, I don't know. We don't really have the pieces set up to target the bulletin that specifically. I think we just send the CRDC thing to anyone who signed up to receive Advisor updates, basically. Advisor 21-22, some more updates compared from last month when we talked. The sandbox was deployed and put out there, more or less all working. We've had a couple of vendors started to test it out. ESU3's been helping us find a few things, so that's been great. We have released some minor updates to the documentation. So vendors, if you haven't already, check back on the vendor page, same one that was in the email I sent out. I keep a little table of what we're changing up there. And then generally our plans for the future, we will put together a staging environment. I'm probably not looking at that until May. And when we get the staging environment ready, that's when we'll also update the certification test plan and put the test plan out. So yeah, we'll be going through, you know, a very similar test plan as we did last year. So generally that'll be the process each year. I wanted to highlight some more of the changes that are coming for 21-22. I covered some last month and I took them off here. And we'll be covering this at the data conference May 12th for sure. Just to get it on everyone's radar ahead of time. One more change is that the digital equity questions have been changed slightly. Basically, I think this year there's one question about primary learning device, and the answers would have 2 bits in them, like it would be personal hyphen shared, personal hyphen not shared, stuff like that. So for next year, these 2 questions are split into 2. Basically, here's our example survey questions. If the student's primary learning device shared with anyone else, and then who provided the primary learning device. So,
I need to ask a question about this. So we need to send this out to all parents again next year?
I believe we would expect this to just be part of that process every year.
Well, I know. Okay. Thank you.
Max, is there any way that these could be sent out to us earlier? We started online registration back in February, And so most of our students are already registered and parents have already answered a lot of these type of questions.
Yeah.
Same with Millard.
You might be able to split them up, but based on what they've answered. Yeah, I
Max,
mean, we aren't planning on changing them every year. They are kind of meant to be just permanent.
Max isn't, but don't you have to resurvey your existing students too?
Yeah, I'm expecting that everyone does need to send this out each year. But
So we were making it part of our back to school forms, I think is what we're gonna do for most.
yeah, Millard already started that 2 months ago, it sounds like.
Yeah. same
Well,
with the
enrollment of
IPs.
new students, but you haven't done, I guess, registering for classes, but
No, we've
Oh.
done, every student at our district registers every single year. Not just new
Okay, oh.
students.
oh, okay.
Yeah, same
most
with
of our
Millard.
districts- Yeah, our districts don't start till July to do the fall registration for like NSAA paperwork and handbooks and all that stuff is in July. That's when we're gonna do ours.
So we started OLR and had the questions about digital equity as a part of OLR. And now it looks like we're going to have to resurvey these students, if I'm understanding that correctly.
And-
No, and we didn't, I mean, we didn't get 100% of our students. Some parents refused to answer and got very upset. And so we probably had about 15% of our students that did not answer. So is there a penalty for that? I didn't get any errors, the only errors I get is if that doesn't correspond with, the validation, but I didn't get
Yeah,
anything.
we haven't set up any errors about like literally making it required for every student. We obviously encourage you to collect this for as many of your students as possible.
Okay,
But we haven't talked about that yet.
good. Well, don't, okay? Just leave it as.
Probably
Oh,
not.
Max, it will not be required for 21, 22.
This is Jill. So we're not saying out there that, you have to survey every single student. There is a possibility this data could be used to distribute funding. And when it comes to like CARES Act, or when we're trying to help decide, where additional resources are needed to help cover gaps in digital equity. It's information that we're using to upload to something called Education Superhighway for a map to help you as a district determine where you have gaps in that digital equity by area, because we use the address information that you're also submitting to us. So while we're not putting any sort of validations in the validation website, I can't guarantee you that not having the information won't affect the district in any way. Now, we're not the ones making those decisions, and I don't know of any specific decisions at this point. But again, as we're making decisions on how to spend particularly CARES Act money, we're going to be looking at this data, and so it could affect you.
Well, and I'm not saying we're not going to survey our parents.
Yeah.
I am saying we don't have 100% response.
Yeah, and I don't know that any district will get 100% response.
Okay.
But it could affect you, but it may affect you, but I can't say for sure.
Okay.
I
The
wouldn't want to
other thing I would say
characterize it
about-
as optional,
I was
basically.
gonna say, the other thing I would say about resurveying is if you have someone in your district who could maybe go back into the database, and because a lot of these questions are other questions broken up, and you may be able to have someone go and do some coding in the back end to break some of these questions into the two separate questions rather than needing to resurvey.
Grand Island and Millard, we can definitely do that with how we have our data in Synergy.
Okay.
Yeah, I can work with Jason there
Yeah.
to try
Is
to
there
help him.
anybody from Infinite Campus on this call?
And if
Uh,
Jason doesn't have time, I mean, LPS or anybody would be willing to share with the other EduPoint districts.
I do not see Rob on.
Okay, I didn't know if there was an Infinite Campus, not just a district, but a,
Yeah.
you know, someone, but thank you. I mean, this is kind of a surprise. So I guess thanks for letting us know now. So,
Yeah, and I will say that we don't, our intention is to always have the changes out by the data conference.
Mhm.
So, or the time where the data conference used to exist. So I don't know that we would ever have these changes out to you in February, but we'll try to keep that in mind next year.
thank you.
I think the goal that us and other states are going for right now, though, is to get these hopefully stable and to just be the same questions that are always asked every year during registration. So I assume that's the goal for where we're going. So another change that we're asking vendors to implement. This is not something that every district needs to do, but I wanted to just make everyone aware. So we are hoping to have all the vendors support student cohort groups. So this is not a graduation cohort. This is just any kind of custom defined group of students can be put together into a cohort and then have staff assigned to them. And this would be an option to be used for NWEA assessment rostering. Jill, would this be statewide and MAP assessments?
Well, basically, yeah, because starting in 21-22, we are doing the through year when it comes to statewide assessment.
All right.
And so this is basically intended to be for the districts that don't have an automated rostering system already, like Clever. For some of those districts who may want to be able to utilize rostering for NWA out of the ODS. For districts who already have another solution in place, they would not need to put this data into the ODS. And again, it's just to help put together staff members who aren't already connected to a student via the courses and sections. So that, if you have a school counselor that you want them to be able to see the reports on the NWA website, and typically you've created a spreadsheet for that. This would allow you to put the information into the ODS, and then we will do the rostering for you. And we're going to start that on a test basis in this fall.
Yep. So we are asking the vendors to be able to support that.
And Max, there's one more vendor change that we're asking the vendors to do, but not into the ODS. And some of you districts will recognize this. This was just decided yesterday. We are going to require vendors to implement the place to put the seal of biliteracy so that it can show up on your transcripts.
Yeah,
and
well,
it's just basically like an indicator on, I don't quite understand transcripts, so, but we are not going to have it sent to the ODS because we already have the data. We basically award them. So we already know which students have that. But in order to make sure that you can put it on those students' transcripts, we are going to have the vendors implement that. And Anna, I don't know if
Can you say that again? I didn't quite catch. You said something about literacy?
the seal of biliteracy, and it's an indicator awarded to students who have proven proficiency in more than one language. And this is a seal that NDE awards, and the students basically, or the I don't quite understand the whole thing. The students have to prove proficiency in more than one language. In English, it's through their ACT exam, and in the other language, there's another way of proving it. NDE awards them. I think I just read that last semester they awarded like 38 of them or 37 of them. And Anna, if none of your districts want this, you as a vendor would have some flexibility because you are in Nebraska only, but the other vendors are going to have to implement it. I know, Anna, for you, your districts direct what happens, which is a
Yeah.
little bit different than our commercial vendors.
So
Um,
are you loading the data, or you want us to have an ability to pull it down? Or do you want us to be able to upload it?
We don't want you necessarily to be able to upload it.
Okay.
It would be for districts to download.
What we want is so that it will show up on the transcripts that you create. So that you send a transcript to a university, it will have the seal by literacy on it.
Okay, so the district needs to be able to put on transcript.
Yeah.
Okay.
And what we're doing is we're making it a state requirement that vendors implement this.
What if the district
Because-
doesn't want it? Are you making a state requirement that districts put it on their transcript?
No, it's entirely up to the district. But
Okay.
some of the districts are wanting to have that seal on there, and we want to make sure that they have that ability to put that on there. So we are directing the vendors to do that.
Now,
Okay,
I
I get it.
haven't heard anything like that in our district. Is that something that they even know they could do? Because our high school, we haven't even ever heard of this. So
I don't know about how much communication. I know that the agency wants to grow this program. And you can find more information. Yeah, David Heffley put a link in there if you want to find out more about the seal up by literacy. That's in the chat, and you can get more information about that. The program is in the teaching and learning section. My knowledge of it is limited to what I've read on that link.
While we're talking about next year,
Yeah.
I wasn't able to be on for the call about last week about withdrawal codes and the new ones that are out there. And I think there was some discussion. I totally get the state operated schools ones, because if those kids are supposed to be at YRTC, they better show up there when they leave your district. But the ones for they transferred to a public school district versus a private school versus out of state.
Yep.
If they pick public school and they don't show up at another public school, is that going to be an error or a warning message?
Yes. I would say it probably would be an error because someone's got to figure it out. What happened to that kid?
But
Well,
it's
federal
like some of our
requirements just
vendors-
require a district to say that you got a records request. Federal requirements aren't that you go track down and see if that really what happened. I mean, for graduation dropout stuff, I think it just says you get a records request, you're good to go. So I just have some districts asking me a lot of questions because I got one who just went through a Title I audit where they're told you get them withdrawn. If they're not in the building, you get them withdrawn.
yeah.
So, because they don't want those kids sitting in the seat because for audit reasons. So
Yeah.
I'm just trying to figure out how much resources a district's going to have to employ to call and find parents who have disappeared, quite frankly, or because they moved to another state and they don't call the old school. They've got their records, they're on their way. So,
But where did
I
the
mean,
records
I feel
request
errors
come from?
well,
Where
they
did
get
the
a records request. They get a records request from the other public school they were supposed to go to. So
Uh-huh.
they have that on record. And then over the summer, this happens, summer is probably the worst of it. Mom and dad gets a job out of state. Well, mom and dad probably took a copy of the records themselves too. And so they don't need to call the school. They'll just move. They don't, and they might tell the other school, but the other school's never going to upload that student because they
Right.
didn't show up.
And they won't tell the
So
school.
now
the
you're
school
asking,
where they're originally at.
No, they're not going to call them. I mean, I get what you're trying to do, and our districts do track it that way. They track that they went public school, private. They try to track that, or they went out of Nebraska. But once they get confirmation that they know that's what happened to them,
Okay.
they're not employing resources to chase those kids. I mean, maybe I'm not speaking for others, but our district have high mobility.
No,
Unless
no.
the kid's still living in their district, they don't have I don't know if there's really a legal Rule 10 or law that says that district has to find where that kid went. They don't live in their district anymore.
Okay, we'll take that under consideration.
I'm going to chime in here. This is Leah from Papillion. And I think my concern is somewhat similar to Anna's, but in a different way, in that the families that go from place to place to place all the time. So we have a kid that we can't find anywhere. We go through the truancy process and we wind up dropping him out. And then all of a sudden he shows up in one of the special purpose schools. Those folks aren't calling us to tell us that. And here we flagged him as a dropout because we don't know where he went. It's a huge, it's like 10% of the kids, but they take about literally 90% of your time trying to track them down. And I just am worried that are we going to be audited down to this degree? Because I know we don't have the manpower to find them all. And we're not the biggest district. I mean, I don't know how Lincoln and Omaha would keep up with something like that.
There's no way we could.
Yeah, so it's just, there are a lot of families out there that just go here, there, everywhere, and we do our best with them, but.
I will say that when it comes to the kids going to the special purpose school, we are going to start making a more concerted effort of finding those kids and keeping track of them, because they are systems involved students. They are higher risk. A lot of them are special education, and they need to, once they're at the special purpose school, there are rules in place that say the resident district is still in charge of their IEP. And so if they're found, after you've dropped them out, if they're found at a special purpose school and you are deemed their district of residence, you do still have some responsibilities for that student when it comes to their IEP. So I will say a lot of these changes were actually driven by the need to track those systems involved students. And we are going to have them very specific guidance coming out around any of the kids in these systems to help us keep better track of them. That's where our focus is going to be with all of this. And because, again, these kids slip through the cracks too much anyway, and we are trying to make sure that we do as much as possible to track them and to help you figure out what it is you need to do. But again, like I said, it's a lot of these kids are special ed and they're not getting their IEPs anymore because they have kind of left any public district before they show up the special purpose, and the special purpose is not the ones in charge of creating and maintaining their IEP. So even though they are responsible for reporting the data, they're not responsible. So we're going to have additional guidance coming out on that. For the public school, we may, when it comes to particularly those high school kids, start looking around for them, and because we want to make sure that we have them in a cohort if they need to be in a cohort.
I should also know we do, I believe, have an existing error where if you've already marked the kid as dropout and then he reappears somewhere else, I think we flagged that.
Yeah. So
On the homeschool, are we gonna, is someone gonna put some, NDE only is only requiring to track him homeschool kids through like what, age 17 or 18? After that, it's on the district, isn't it? Don't they fall off that NDE report? And someone from the
right,
district would know better.
Once they reach the age of 18, they are no longer under compulsory attendance. Yeah. That just is, again, it gives you another If you know they're going to exempt or homeschool, you can utilize that code. What I'm expecting is more of a warning for the public school, but an error for the special purpose school. If you transfer them out to a special purpose school and they're not enrolled in a special purpose school, or if they're in a special purpose school and you're identified as a district of residence, you should have a transfer out for it. It's going to take some work, I know that, around these kids, but they need someone looking out for them, and we're doing what we can do.
Well, and you could have a case, and it may not be the district's fault at all, that the kid left the public school, went to a private school. So they used the 215 non-public, and then they went to the special purpose school. So now we have to go back and update withdrawal records that were accurate at one point, but because
Well, no, you don't necessarily have to update the withdrawal records. What you would do then is re-enroll them and transfer them out to the special purpose school.
it's going to cost me, then you're going to pay me a day of ADM?
Basically, yeah, not worried about that.
This is OPS. I'm thrilled to see these codes because we've had a hard time managing without them. And we were actually just about to utilize the local start and end statuses to do this exact thing. And this will help us tremendously because we get it. I'll tell you, with the special purpose schools, we get requests for records. And as soon as we get that request for a record, we know they're there and we go ahead and put them in. The error that Max was talking about is a huge help to us. As you can imagine, we have a lot of kids in these situations, and almost all of these are going to really help you identify where they went. I don't know, on that special purpose school, when you re-enroll and then take them back out, do you want us to like put a 0% kind of like we do when we're contracting?
Yeah, you can do that.
And that way we have a record of it, but we're not claiming money for them.
Right. And we are going to be just like your contract out kids. If that student continues to be in that special purpose school, you're going to be doing it every year.
Right.
Again, we're tracking them a little bit more like contract out kids in that case.
And then I just want to throw in one more thing, because we run into a lot of this, and I know a lot of the other school districts in Nebraska do. I don't know if everybody knows, and I apologize for jumping in here, but there is non-regulatory guidance out there about a student who transfers to another country. And I just want to make sure everybody is aware of the fact that you don't have to get any kind of request for records or confirm anything when they leave the country. All you have to have for that is a record that you spoke with a family member. It can't be like a neighbor or anybody like that, but a family member who says, yes, they have gone to another country. Because once they're in another country, they're under those regulations in terms of whether or not they're required to attend school. So we are allowed to do it as a transfer out, even without any confirmation, with only the, and we just record it. We have a place we record that conversation with who, you know, who the parent is, what day they told us, what country they're going to, that type of thing.
And Leah is asking, do you know where that guidance comes from?
I'll find that, and Max, can I send it to you? What's the best way for me to get it to everybody?
Yeah, I mean, everyone here at the help desk would probably like to know that as well. So
okay, that sounds good.
On the, Jill, the expectance of a 214 record every year,
Yep.
that's a little different than contract out public, because contract out public, we don't, I mean, we track these kids differently. So
I know.
that's a change.
It is a change, yes.
That's going to be tricky.
Because again, if they have,
so they get a 5 on that, or they're not a residence code 5 anymore. It's still 0 on the resident status code.
right.
Damn. All right.
Now you can create a separate code in your system that then
The problem is you want me
That's-
to put a withdraw code in every year, and I only
Yeah.
have that coded for contract public, and I easily handled that because they're status code 5. So this is going to require some coding for us to handle this.
Well, I mean, there's nothing stopping you from creating a different, in your system, a different status code, whatever, and then mapping it to our 0.
Well, I'll have that mapped, and when they leave our district, they'll withdraw as a 214, and we'll report that when it goes. But what
Yeah.
you're asking is that happened on January 15th, let's say. What you're asking is next fall, on August 10th or whatever, you want me to send another 214. I don't
Yes.
have a 214 for August 10th right now. I have that kid gone. He's gone. He's not even as actively enrolled kid in my district anymore. So we're gonna have to change processes for districts to handle this.
Yes.
Totally.
And again, we didn't make the decision lightly. It's really because of kids were just going missing.
But don't you
And-
have records that show that that kid was at the YRTC in the spring? I mean, you
But
know
a
they
lot
were
of
there
times-
then.
A lot of times what we don't know, like, especially if these kids, and a lot of these kids are supposed to have an IEP, and what's happening is their IEP is not going with them. And so the district that is the resident district needs to know that they still have responsibility for that kid. And that they are still the ones who have to do the IEP. And there's additional requirements around SPED that I'm not sure of because I'm not a SPED person. So, but a large portion of the kids that go to these special purpose schools are involved in the special education system. So yes, we're putting more requirements on you. Yes, it's going to be more difficult. But it's
From the
hard
non-
to say that it's hard to say that the kids aren't worth it.
And I'll say on the 214.
I never said the kids
I
aren't
know,
worth
Anna.
it. So don't put that in my mouth.
I was not saying you said that, Anna. I did not mean it that way. I'm sorry.
Hey,
But
this is
it's-
Papillion again. With respect to the non-public schools, I'm going to straight up tell you that they don't always tell us that, they're going here or there, but I can promise you, if they have an IEP, our district is all over that. We are chasing those kids very hard.
Yeah.
So if this is IEP driven, I will be having a conversation with my SPED director about that, because
Well,
this is going to be a lot of work. It's
If
going
they're
to be a
going
lot of
out
work.
to a non-public school and they have an IEP, you don't have to transfer that kid out because the kid will stay enrolled for their SPED purposes.
But their FTE has to change. I'm
Yeah,
not
their
concerned
FTE
about,
has to change.
yeah,
And then
all
you
of,
then the exit record you give is just the basically, what do we use? The 200 for that, I think.
yeah, the SPED kids, that's what I'm saying. The SPED kids for a non-public side, we're all over that. But
Yeah,
knowing who's transferring out to a non-public school that doesn't have any other special needs,
If they
they
tell
don't
you
like giving it to us as it is now. We have to pull teeth to get it from them.
but
And
are they telling
at
you where
some
the
point,
kids?
somebody has to give something, you know?
Well,
Are
Leah,
they-
Leah,
are they-
your SPED directors have to figure out if they're still at the private school or not. I mean, they have to know that when we
I'm not
know
worried
that.
about our SPED kids. I'm worried about having to track kids that are going to a non-public school
You
where
don't have
they say they're going to go to a public school and then they change over to St. Columkill. And we don't know that. How do we know that they went from Ralston Public School over to a Catholic school? We don't.
Well, so when they
At what
transfer
point-
out, don't
at
you
what-
get the request for records?
Yeah, but once they go to Ralston Public, then are we done with them? Because you talked about a minute ago, putting in and an out if they wind up at a special purpose school. So I guess at what point,
This is just for the special purpose schools. that we're
Jill,
requiring that.
on that
Yes.
special purpose school, I don't understand why the district has to keep saying they left every year when the special purpose school reports the resident district to you.
I
Can't the-
agree. We never, once they go to YRTC, we transfer them out and we do not worry about them because they're their kids, not ours
Yeah,
anymore.
well, and I mean, you're still in charge of their IEP, but you don't report any of that data. I mean, the districts have to track it at that point, but I mean, couldn't NDE write a report and advisor validation that said, hey, these are your kids at a special purpose school?
Okay,
And
so in
these-
OPS, we actually enroll them back into, we've created a special purpose school that we enroll them back into if they have an IEP. So if they don't have an IEP, that's exactly right. You transfer them out and you're done with them because the special purpose school does it. But if you do that on a kid who has an IEP, then you've lost the ability to track that kid. So those are the only kids that we would bring back in. And then we would either do the 0% or state. Right now, what we're doing is state excluding them, but still showing them as an active person in our special purpose school,
Yeah,
if you will. And
And I
that
think-
way we can track the IEP, basically.
and I think everyone has ways to track those kids when they know they've got one there and they have to do IEPs on them. And we all have ways to do it to make sure we don't upload anything on them to the state at this time, because you're not supposed to. But now we're backtracking that and saying every year we have to say they're at the special purpose school, which, I mean, there's not a ton that stay there year to year, but I'm just wondering, I think no matter what, it'd be nice if there was a report that would tell districts, hey, YRTC claims these kids live in your district and they're at YRTC.
That would be nice because we don't always know. We usually know when they're in those schools, but we don't always.
I think we could look into that.
I just know that we have way too many kids that we're supposed to have an IEP and we're just showing up, and the district that had the responsibility for the IEP just never knew about it. And sometimes these kids will go somewhere else. They may go out of state, but like mom still lives in your district, and then the kid comes back and they never told you they re-enroll, and then they get in trouble and they end up at special purpose school. And if they're supposed to have an IEP, yeah, you're still responsible for it. And I know they haven't been there for a year and suddenly you have this responsibility, but we were just finding way too many kids that were not keeping their IEP, and the district that was responsible didn't know.
What if
And we
they
had
were
to figure
opting-
out another way to keep track of them so we knew who was responsible for that IEP.
So what if they're optioning into our district? Are we
Option
still
in?
responsible? I mean, they were
Option
optioning in, then they went missing, so we dropped them. And now all of a sudden we are getting notice that this kid is at a special purpose school. Are we responsible to re-enroll them, or is their resident district responsible? There's some muddy water there, I feel like. And
Yeah, and I know that when it comes to the option, that the option district essentially is now the resident district when it comes to things like the IEP. I would have to talk to our legal counsel. We've had someone in our legal team helping us with all of this.
Okay.
And we'll put that as one of our examples, because we're doing a lot of examples when we do the documentation on this. And we'll put that as one of the examples that we need to go through to see which district is now responsible for that student's IEP.
Jill, we have one other situation that's just come up and we're trying to fumble through how we deal with it. We had a student that went missing, we dropped him, and come to find out from probation, his address is now in a different city. So we have no option paperwork. His parents live in a different city. And now all of a sudden he's at NNJS. Who's responsible?
The district where he was a resident when he became involved in the system, I believe. So it depends on where his parents lived at the point that he got involved in the system. I
Yeah,
think
and
is
that
the
would
right
be
answer.
different city in this situation for the student. so
and-
that-
And so
But-
it could be- at that point, that district may actually have to enroll the student just for this purpose.
Okay,
Again, it's keeping track of those kids. I know it's
We might,
have fun this first year getting it all worked out. I will tell you that.
Jamie,
Jill, we
if
might,
you have some more of
Go-
those examples, you might just want to send in a help desk ticket and we can try to help work through those.
Because
okay,
we're actually meeting on occasion and working through all these different examples that we're coming up with. And if you have an example that we haven't already worked through, we'll add it to our list and we'll work through what needs to be done. And we're going to have a document specifically for these systems involved students so that you know what your responsibility is, if it's your responsibility, if it's someone else's, what you need to do.
yeah, because the big thing is it's not about not wanting to support the student. It's
Oh,
just
yeah.
to make sure we're doing it right, and every district's doing it right, and not just one or two.
hey,
Yeah.
Jill, on NCYF, the
Yes.
correction unit, they've got a, like, adult, like, they don't necessarily have the resident districts. They're reporting themselves as the resident district, so I
That's
don't
one of the
know.
problems.
Okay. They also get
We-
42-year-old students, so I don't know how we
We'll
handle it.
keep talking about this in the next couple of meetings for sure as we get into the fall. We're gonna move on for now though. We got about 5 minutes left. I just wanted to catch up on a few things. Greg asked about future ready district technology plans. I'm not really familiar with that. Is that related to digital equity? I'm not sure. But Greg, maybe just send us an email about that. I'm not totally familiar with that. I think I caught up on the other questions in the chat. We discussed at the February meeting. I don't remember that. But yeah, go ahead and send us an email. We can catch up. Vendor updates, nothing really that I'm aware of other than just wanted to note that NWEA is now starting to send us map results directly into Advisor so that in the future we will be posting those into the dashboard, and obviously in the future there'll be statewide assessment related data too. So anyway, I haven't heard anything else really going on with any of the other vendors. But I guess if anyone on, see Anna or Greg, if you guys had any updates, let me know.
Max, do you happen to know how long it takes once Advisor knows a student is sped? How long it is before NWEA knows they're sped?
Right now, we are uploading to NWA weekly for the statewide assessment. So it's uploaded, I believe, on Thursday. And so it's basically what we have, I think, when we start the day on Thursday, but I'm not sure. And then when it comes to what we're hoping to do with the rostering this fall, it will be a nightly thing.
Thank you.
Any question from Greg? Point for the SIS vendors, yeah, technically that data is available through the student assessment resource. So yeah, SIS vendors can technically read that data now, as far as I know. We haven't ever really talked with any vendors about using it, but yeah, if you're interested in doing something like that, Greg, let us know.
I have a question about the upload from Advisor to NWEA. If we decide we want to continue to use Clever, which I know we will, because we already do that and it works great. But will it still, you're saying, once you change to upload that SPED data, will that go for all districts?
No, we have to figure out how we're going to
Okay,
find out which districts we need to load for.
okay. I mean, so for the districts who want it to be synced nightly, they can do that. But for us, it'd still be just once a week for the SPED data, correct?
Yeah, it's whenever you
Okay.
load your Clever data.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you.
I assume we might work with them to be able to have settings on their side, but yeah, we'll see. All right. One thing I wanted to get on in front of everyone here, the new innovation or EIN, Education Innovation Network for data visualization and use is looking for volunteers. As they say, teachers, principals, administrators, ESU staff, and anyone hoping to expand their data visualization skills. They are accepting applications but until next Friday. So if anyone's interested, please check out this link. There's a PDF here and a video describing everything that we are talking about. So I think there's going to be there's another company that's involved in doing some pretty serious data viz training, I imagine. And yeah, we'll be sending a bulletin item out about this as well. So in case anyone forgets, I'm sure you'll catch it there. All right, we are out of time. Like I said, there's no meeting in May, as we will be doing the data conference that day. So our next meeting is going to be June 9th. And Zoom thought it was in our interest to be able to have a new Zoom link for this meeting. So for anyone watching the recording of this later, this link in the agenda is the new link, and we will get all our web pages updated with this new link here in the near future. All right, so we're out of time. I think we'll call that for today. Thanks for joining, everyone, and we will keep our discussions going at our next meeting in June.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.